Hey, welcome to Classics You Slept Through. We are the book podcast where we talk about old books after we have read them to you. I'm your host, Kyle Davis, along with my sister, my co-host, a girl who, when she's feeling down, always goes to her elderly neighbor and talks about what they wore last month. Meredith.
You know, I actually used to go visit our elderly neighbors, Maggie and Margreta, when I was a kid. That's how cool I was. I played with our elderly neighbors.
You are literally our heroine.
We played perfection. Book. They fed me chocolate.
All good things that elderly neighbors should do. You didn't talk about your dresses and gloves?
No, I didn't have dresses and gloves.
Interesting. Well, hey, we have a special treat for you all this week. We're actually standing right next to each other yet again. This is in-person pod number 2. Exciting. Very exciting. I don't know if we have any special guests from downstairs, but we shall see.
You can hear the baby. We have a plethora of family members to choose from the children to the parents, the
Too
pets.
Many children. If you need some children, we have extra. Just write to us at cystpod@gmail.com. We're not going to let you pick. It's going to be a random selection, but we'll send you one or two. Anyway, so today we are talking about Northanger Abbey. We finished Northanger Abbey. We're done.
Finally.
We have reached the conclusion. All our characters have gotten their happy endings. Loose ends are tied up. And Jane Austen gets her say.
Well, not everyone has a happy ending.
Perhaps not, but at least they have an ending.
An ending.
That we've reached. So we're going to pick this up in chapter 27. We have just had our heroine, Catherine Morland, been unceremoniously and very rudely kicked out of Northanger Abbey by General Tilney.
No.
What?
Chapter 27 is the beginning. That's the end.
Oh, man.
That's okay. We can either edit or keep and show everyone which one of us
who can't even read their own writing. Yeah, apparently. It's not me, folks. Apparently, it's not me. So let me back up. So chapter 27, we're still at Northanger Abbey. We haven't kicked out heroine Catherine yet. But we get a letter from her friend Isabella Thorpe from Bath. Isabella, who was going to write to her faithfully, tell her what was all the ins and outs, the goings-on in Bath. Finally, Catherine hears from her, and Isabella actually has some news. So when we last left Isabella, we heard from Catherine's sister, Catherine's brother. Man, I am not doing well on this podcast today, folks. It's just not my day. I just finished a 3-hour drive. I have dropping stuff off at my sister's house, and I have a 3-hour drive back. So
by stuff, he means our father and mother. That's the stuff he has dropped off.
and a large bag of stress as well. That's the other thing I'm dropping off.
And 3 extra children.
And 3 extra children. So as you can see, it's not a boast, folks. You want extra children? Write to us. I will bring you children. I will deliver for free. Just like we give you audiobook podcasts for free of classic books. So anyway, the last we heard of Isabella, Catherine had gotten word from her brother James that his engagement to Isabella was broken off because she has accepted another engagement from one Captain Frederick Tilney, the elder brother of our heroine's beau.
Scandal.
Yes. So now we get to hear it from Isabella's side, and she is broken. She is distraught because Frederick has broken off their engagement. And she wants Catherine to know that James, when he went away, he seemed upset.
He had a cold?
Something was wrong.
A cold.
Yeah, he needs a lozenge. So can you please write to him and tell him of my undying love and how I missed him and
how I wear purple.
I hate purple. I look terrible. But, James kind of liked it. So that's literally all I wear now, Catherine. Please, just one word of kindness to your brother. She's pretty desperate at this point.
Yep. Frederick has dropped her for Charlotte Davis.
Well, we don't know for sure what Frederick's doing, but he's at least...
The last 2 days he was by her side.
This is true.
Harlot Davis.
Those Davis girls. So Catherine, in a bit of character growth, decides, I'm not even going to bother writing back to Isabella. I don't really care what's going on in Bath. I'm fine. And I'm kind of proud of her for that, honestly.
It is a definite moment of character growth because not only does she decide not to write back, but she recognizes the entire letter as a, quote, strain of shallow artifice, which is exactly what Isabella and James are. I guess their parents just produced strains of shallow artifices.
Artificers.
Shallow artificers.
Isn't that someone that makes, like monuments?
I have no idea. Is that a real thing?
It is. It is a real thing. At least if you play a lot of old RPGs. Well, so now Catherine's got her letter from Isabella, and as you did in those days, she shares it with the Tilneys, and she shares it from the perspective of, hey, guys, your brother Frederick, man, he dodged a bullet. He is now safe from Isabella.
And she also shares it from the perspective of they're looking at her face drop. They're watching her read because they don't have TV or phones. So you watch people read letters. And so they're watching her read this letter, and they're like, oh, she's gravely affected by the letter. What's in the letter? What's the letter? What's the letter? It's a Sesame Street episode.
Well, it's interesting because Catherine has no concept whatsoever. So she thinks that Frederick Tilney got out of this bad situation. Whereas the Tilneys, Eleanor and Henry, they know this is just what Frederick's about.
Right. Not surprised.
This is what he does. And our dear, sweet, sweet Catherine, she cannot understand this at all. I guess there's no players down at Fullerton. That is clear. She's never run into, a tomcat.
And she does also kind of feel bad for Isabella till Henry corrects her. She feels bad, like, what if your brother had made her fall in love with him? And Henry replies but we must first suppose Isabella to have a heart to lose, and therefore she would have to have been a very different creature. So he literally thinks Isabella is this heartless,
no sympathy,
social climber, gold digger.
Which is what she is. But no sympathy for Isabella whatsoever.
Well, Isabella has no other recourse, too. If I could, sexism of the time being what it was, social climbing, not a bad move if it works.
This is true.
Right?
Because her father's dead, right? There's no Mr. Thorpe.
I don't know.
Is that right? Well, I mean, we see Mrs. Thorpe in Bath. I don't think we ever see Mr. Thorpe.
Right. Mrs. Allen thinks oh no, that's of the Tilneys. She thought they were both dead.
Right.
And then
she figures out the Tilneys, the wife is gone. But yeah, I don't think we have a Mr. Thorpe. So the Thorpe family is just relying on, I guess, whatever residuals from their estate prior, but it's not like they're, Mrs. Thorpe isn't out making business deals to expand the Thorpe empire, such as it doesn't exist.
Right. Well, Kat decides not to think of Isabella's letter anymore, and then we're on to chapter 28.
Chapter 28, where the drama that drives us to the end of this book happens. So General Tilney, he suddenly has to go off to London, and the mood at Northanger completely shifts. It's addition by subtraction. General Tilney's gone, and now there is just this wonderful atmosphere of fun and gaiety, and, the kids are off at Northanger's having a great time. And Catherine kind of realizes that despite all of the general's wonderful praise and compliments, that, wow, things are like the black cloud has been lifted, and things are really great without him around.
But, so everything's great without him around, and Kat starts to think, maybe I'm overstaying my welcome. I should say this to Eleanor, because she's been there, a month already?
Almost a month.
Right.
Her month will pass before the general comes back, so it's, we're close to a month.
So she brings it up to Eleanor, and Eleanor is like, no, quite the contrary. I want you to stay much longer.
Yes.
She'd hoped for the pleasure of our company for a much longer time, and Kat's like, cool, because I brought that up. I didn't actually think I was overstaying my welcome. I was just kind of probing.
Just being polite.
Yeah.
It just seems odd to me that you would go stay at someone else's house, be completely at their mercy. You're dependent upon them for literally everything at this point. And there's no discussion of, well, how long am I going to be here? I don't know.
Well, at least they have servants.
This is true. But are we going to use them? We'll find out. Well, so Henry, he has to leave. So he takes off to Woodston. And, he's got his regular business he takes care of there. And not long after he leaves, there's a visitor comes to the door. Catherine immediately thinks, oh, it must be, Frederick Tilney coming back, because he apparently does that. He just pops in and out unannounced.
She doesn't want to see him.
Does not want to see this guy. She does not think he can be civil. She could be civil to him because of how he treated Isabella, even though she has no care for Isabella. She just doesn't like his sort of roustabout character, I suppose. So she goes upstairs and says, I don't even want to see this guy. She's up there for a good amount of time, and then Eleanor comes up and has some bad news.
Yeah, she doesn't just come up. She comes up totally distraught that she has to bring an errand to her. Come to you on such an errand, she says. And she doesn't even know how to say it. And she tells her that, oh, my dad has suddenly remembered an engagement that's going to take the whole family away, and you got to go. And she's like, oh, that's fine.
Right.
No worries. That happens. And so I'll go when you go. She's like, no, you can't go when we go. You got to go tomorrow, first thing in the morning, and you have to go alone with no money.
No servant.
2 days away, 11 hours or whatever.
We can't send anybody with you. We're not sending a carriage. You get on the Greyhound bus. Get out of here. She's taking the post back.
Catherine's never done anything like that before.
She's a 17-year-old girl on her own at the mercy of these post carriages taking her back home.
That actually sounds quite dangerous.
In these times, it probably is, quite frankly.
I wouldn't send my 17-year-old daughter, in a series of Ubers across a 2-day journey.
Well, I mean, it's at least some sort of official vehicle. I mean, she's riding a mail truck. I guess she popped a UPS van and she's going across country, basically.
She's like a hobo.
Yeah. Well, she's been sent out, so it's a 70-mile journey. It's going to take her 2 days to get back. They have to change horses and they have to stay over. She's very upset because this is the height of insult. This is societally and in polite company. You just don't do this. We're a much more individualistic society, so I don't really know. Do we have a societal norm that you could break and be completely insulted by? I guess if you invited someone to your house and then when they got there, you just made them stand on the porch and talk to them and never let them into your house, I guess that would be some level of the same sort of insult. I don't know.
I've never had that happen to us, except we did.
Never at all. Not speaking from experience here. Well, so she's very upset that she's getting sent off in such a rude fashion. But Eleanor, she's sorrowful at this. And she hints at something here because she wants Catherine to write to her while she's out at Lord Longton's. But she says, please address it to Alice. So you can't even, I guess she says under the cover. I mean, she meant for Catherine to write as though Catherine was Alice, right?
Right, because
under the cover of Alice.
Right, it's clear that Eleanor's not allowed to receive a letter from Catherine. So, what's going through Catherine's mind right now? You're not even allowed, I have to leave in this sudden fashion, and I'm not even allowed to write to you under my own name. I must have offended your dad. What have I done? And Eleanor's like, I have no idea.
Right. She's not just ghosting her, she's blocking her at this point.
Right.
I want zero contact with you at all.
Well, at least Dad says so. Eleanor doesn't really feel that
Eleanor
way.
wants her to keep writing. We also have another problem because Catherine has no money. So she's got no cash left over from her allowance at Bath. And with this sudden departure, she doesn't have time to write to Fullerton to ask for some money to even get back. So I'm sure she has to pay for food and with this rude treatment, you don't think General Tilney's paying for the post carriages, is he? I mean, he's not paying her.
Nothing. He's
her
giving
bus
her
fare.
nothing. He's basically literally kicking her out.
Right. So Eleanor, sweet Eleanor, does give her a little cash and sends her on her way. To
this is the part that I mentioned last week that I was totally obsessed with finding out why on earth this was happening. What to me as a reader was so abrupt that General Tilney, after doting on her, which was also strange, Catherine's like, I don't know why he likes me so much.
Right.
Everything seems to be about me, and now he's kicking her out. So I immediately thought something about John Thorpe. My thought was, he's behind it in some way, but I was wrong about the way.
Interesting. See, I had no concept of it. And I think when I was reading it too, I'm wondering to a reader, a contemporary reader of the book, the depth of insult of how Catherine is being sent away maybe would have been more viscerally felt. To me, I don't think I quite understood until a little bit later, on a reread and going back over. On a first read, I don't think that I quite internalized the amount of insult that Catherine was feeling. She's being completely cut off from this family abruptly that she thought that they were very good friends.
Yeah, and she's trying her best to keep up her end of the societal agreement of, being polite and having decorum. In fact, she's comforting Eleanor and saying, you're so upset. Don't worry. It's okay. I'll be all right. Don't worry about me. And it's not until she closes the door that she bursts into tears.
Right. I mean, General Tilney had been hinting at her becoming his daughter-in-law. We're going to buy more china. We're going to,
keep this cottage that you like.
Right. You can fix this place up later. Kat didn't quite pick up on everything, but I think maybe in retrospect, she's like, wow, I mean, they were so nice to me, hanging on my every opinion of decoration of this cottage. And now I'm just, nope, you can't even wait till Monday to leave. You got to leave in the morning.
It is really brutal.
It kind of is. You don't even get to, not only do you have to go home, you don't get to even decide the time you go home. But wait, I have to get some money to go home. I have to write my father, it's going to take a day or two to, she's basically being told, you can't even really pack.
Yeah.
I think if he could have kicked her stuff out immediately, he would have. He doesn't even say, you have to leave tomorrow, pick your flight. He's like, no, I got you the red eye. You're out of here.
Yeah. He's treating her like she's literally nothing.
Right. Which, as we'll find out, he may think she is. So now we get to chapter 29. This is our journey home. Catherine now has some time to think. And she's, wondering, why is he kicking me out? Why is he treating me so incredibly rudely? He must have heard that I thought he killed his wife. Which, to be fair, you have a guest in your home. They're like, hey, did you kill your wife? Yeah, I think that would be a little insulting.
But she can't fathom that Henry would tell him, though. But then she can't think of any other insult that she would have caused.
Right.
Who's that guy that did kill his wife? Scott Peterson?
Oh, that one, he had one wife. That was 3 or 4.
One while she was pregnant. They just got the death penalty just got overturned or something, but he's still guilty. I get him and Jordan Peterson confused, who apparently is some alt-right person.
Oh, yeah. He's like, yeah.
So I'm like, why is everyone talking about Jordan Peterson? Didn't he kill his wife?
Oh, Scott Peterson, he's like the cop that had 3 or 4 wives and they all died under mysterious circumstances. I'm sorry, listeners, if maybe there are some people out there who have been married 3 or 4 times and totally natural causes. But if you're a policeman and you're investigating a death and you find out, oh, your previous wife also died, I think you would want to look a little more into it. I mean, we're not a true crime podcast or anything, but...
No, but that Tiger King stuff, her husband disappeared. Did you watch Tiger King?
I did not. I didn't.
You're probably better off at this point. It was all the rage in early pandemic.
Right.
Now it's kind of tired.
I caught the Twitter buzz.
The late pandemic period.
Yeah.
Anyway. So
she gets home, and, Austen talks about our heroine should get this noble return at the end of her life-changing journey where she's picked up a guy. But no, instead, she's coming home on the post, and it's not quite what she expected.
No, Austen says, I bring back my heroine to her home in solitude and disgrace.
But everybody's happy to see her.
Yeah.
So that's nice, at least. Unannounced, coming home. The family, it causes a stir. People don't usually come to Fullerton, but everybody's happy to see Catherine. She explains everything. Her parents are on her side, which is good. They agree General Tilney treated you horribly. She does keep her promise, unlike, I guess a contrast with Isabella. Isabella never wrote. Catherine immediately writes to Eleanor and returns her money. And so that kind of makes her feel a little better.
I wonder if she feels... I'm sure Catherine doesn't, but I'm thinking, if I write like I'm supposed to, I give money back. Catherine now looks really good in the idea of the social contract. You treat the people who've turned you out better, certainly better than they've treated her, but better than they deserve even.
Right. She is ensuring that there's no cause for offense. There is no debt that she has outstanding with General Tilney's family. She wants to make sure that she is blameless. And,
her family's happy to see her and she explains everything, but her mother is a poor consoler of her daughter. She's happy to have her home, but she also doesn't necessarily feel bad for her. She said that, my dear Catherine, you always were a sad little scatterbrained creature. But now you must have been forced to have your wits about you with so much changing of chases and so forth. So
you couldn't hack it.
I hope you didn't leave anything behind in any of the pockets. Like, what?
Right.
What? I've just been kicked out. I'm a sad, scatterbrained creature, and I hope you didn't leave anything in the pockets. Like, did you get your lip gloss, Catherine?
And obviously she made it home, so her mother chastising her for, do you remember all of the changing of the carriages? Well, she did. She's home, Mom. Come on.
It's such a jerk thing to do, to take people's, like, misfortunes and say, well, at least you've grown.
Yes.
Good for your character growth. In the midst of the feeling bad. Like, it's still a fresh wound.
Well, as we see with Mom's lack of consoling, the only thing she can think of to do to lift Catherine's spirits is, hey, why don't we go see Mrs. Allen? Because she's a great one for conversation.
She's a gem.
If we remember from the earlier part of the book. So they walk over there, and they explain the story to Mr. and Mrs. Allen. And, I have to say, Mr. Allen, I think I mentioned it before, my favorite character in the BBC, Pride and Prejudice. I don't even know which character he was. I called him the capital guy, because he just would clap his hands, and his only line was, ooh, capital, capital. And that's how I view Mr. Allen. He's there, and he just kind of was like, whatever's going on in this scene, I'm going to go somewhere else. They get to the balls, and he's like, yeah, I'm gonna go play cards. I'll see you guys later. Dance all you want. They get to the Allens. They explain it all. Mr. Allen offers his condolences, or, comfort, and he's like, I'm gonna get out of here. And Mrs. Allen, she has such wonderful things to say. She just takes whatever Mr. Allen said, and you know what? That was good. The way he said it, I'm going to say it. The way Austen puts it, I absolutely loved. It said that Mr. Allen expressed himself on the occasion with reasonable resentment of a sensible friend, and Mrs. Allen thought his expressions quite good enough to be immediately made use of again by herself. So, Mrs. Allen's like, you know what? I can't say any better than him, so I'm just gonna re-say it. Basically,
she's like, ditto. What he said.
Exactly.
Now let's talk about dresses.
Yes, because if we remember Mrs. Allen from Bath, she couldn't let a quiet moment go. She was always just speaking and with no conversation actually happening.
And no consideration for what's just happened. So, she expresses that her only individual expression is that she has no patience for the general. I really have not patience with the general. She keeps saying that over and over. But then she decides to remind Catherine of how wonderful and how lucky they were to have met the Thorpes, who Catherine is very distraught over the Thorpes and what happened with James, and yet Mrs. Allen is bringing up, wasn't it great that the Thorpes were there? You made such a good friend in Isabella. And then she goes on to say, oh, and Henry was so agreeable. Didn't you dance? Just like pouring salt all over these fresh, open wounds that Catherine has. So thanks, Mrs. Allen. And we do remember your silk gloves. They were deliciously beautiful.
The guy's house you just got kicked out of. He was a really great dancer, and you liked his company, didn't you?
And no one once.
Boy, that sucks.
No one once has thought about Catherine's heart, it says.
Not at all. So we close the chapter with the Morlands heading home, and Catherine's thought is, it's been, I guess, 2 days at this point, 2-3 days. Surely Henry has returned from Woodston, and he's had to have heard what had happened by now. I wonder how that went. Well, we will find out in chapter 30. Because now, Kat's just lying about. She's depressed. She's kind of down. Her mom's like, okay, it's been 2 days. I can hack 2 days. Day 3 rolls around, and look, Catherine, you are not being useful. You got to get up, start doing your needlework.
Literally, you've had a long run of amusement, and now you must try to be useful.
I mean, there is no higher goal in life than to be a useful engine.
Or at least a useful woman. If you're not a useful woman, what good are you?
Exactly. And plus, Catherine apparently is just, you got to read between the lines a little bit, but she's got to be insufferable. Because all she talks about is how wonderful Northanger Abbey was. They're having breakfast, and the bread at Northanger, it was amazing. And her mom's just like, look, you've got to stop talking about Northanger, honey. You've been here 3 whole days. After living there for a month, talk about something else. And she's just the typical, 18-year-old who's gone abroad for the first time and comes home and just everything about whatever, the food in Italy, and oh, you should have seen the water in Greece was so clear, not like the lakes here. Oh, no, it's insufferable.
Well, it's also kind of cute. I've told you this before, but the university I used to work at, the kids, the freshmen, would go away on their first spring break. It was called Spring Preview because we wanted them to study abroad. And by telling us before, she's referencing the story that she told on the first time we recorded this podcast, which is why we're coming out a day late. Anyway, I'm sorry. Go ahead. You could have just pretended like we talked over coffee or something. True. Anyway, so they go away on Spring Preview to encourage them to study abroad, because Arcadia University is big on global studies. And it's like $500, or it was back in the day. Which is super cheap. How much it is now. Yeah, it was everything for the week. That's amazing. And they would come back totally changed. Some of them, like, just stars in their eyes. They're like, well, in Greece, it was like this. And in Japan, did you know there's no trash on the ground? And they have no public trash cans. You have to take it with you. And I learned so much about so many other countries. And it really did change some of them for the better. And they did go off to study abroad. And I got to go as a chaperone for free to Ireland. Very nice. And the university paid for it. I tried to come to Jordan, you remember when you were there? I created a course that was going to take the students to Jordan. That's right. And because I'd never been there and didn't speak Arabic. And then I think Daesh happened, right? ISIS happened. Isn't that why you didn't get the course made? No, I didn't get the course made because I hadn't been there before myself. Oh, and they wanted me to go, and then they liked my course. It was a good course, but yeah. Yes, you should have come visit your brother. Oh well. Yeah, well. Anyway, so you're here now. I am here now. So, and travel is good. We are a pro-travel podcast. Get out and travel, people. I think Americans would have a lot more empathy if they traveled and got outside of wherever they lived and met other people. Anyway, I digress. So Henry gets there. So Mom knows the trick. So Catherine's moping about, and she says, you know what, Catherine, you need? I have this great essay up in the mirror that talks about girls who are spoiled and don't like their home because they've met somebody who's richer, or a great acquaintance, as they phrase it. The essay's called The Mirror. That's what it's called. The essay was called The Mirror? The essay's called The Mirror. I thought the book was called The Mirror. Isn't the book a collection of essays? There's very clever essays in one of the books upstairs upon such a subject about young girls have been spoilt for home by great acquaintance. The Mirror, I think. Interesting. I thought The Mirror was the book. Perhaps. Maybe it's the name of the essay. We're going to have to look this up. Mom doesn't quite remember either. Bonus pod. Anyway, so I just... Again, Mom is kind of insufferable. Like, you know what your problem is? You need to read this great op-ed in the New York Times. That'll fix everything. That'll fix you right up. That's exactly what I need. It's changed so many right-wing people's minds every time you share an article with them about... I mean, it's worked on Dad time and time again. Yeah. You just got to get the right meme. That's what you got to get to change that mind. So Mom goes upstairs to get this book. And surprise, surprise, we have a visitor while she's upstairs. Henry arrives. Yeah. What timing. So Mom comes down, gets introduced to Henry Tilney, and, they start to converse and hang out. And I absolutely love the fact that Mom, she can hang for about 15 minutes. Dad's not there. She wants him to be there. She's like, where's Mr. Moreland? I need his help. Well, he is unfortunately away from home. She even sends one of the kids to get him. Right. Like, it's that important. But, Mr. Moreland's away from home, and without any support, at the end of a quarter an hour, she had nothing to say. Nothing. So, met a brand new person, can't even talk for 15 minutes. Nope. And I was just, picturing this conversation. I can't imagine. Because, so Mom runs out of things to say after 15 minutes. And then it says, after a couple of minutes, unbroken silence. Minutes. So... We're gonna give 10 seconds of unbroken silence here. Are you ready? I'm ready. All right, 10 seconds. Let's go. I think that's it. Okay. Was that it? That was weird. That was, yeah. I mean, how weird is that? And that's just a couple of seconds. Can you imagine sitting in a room, the three of you, you've just met this person, and the clock on the wall, tick, tick, And it's silent. There are
Silent.
8 other children. Everyone is silent?
I can't imagine how awkward that would be. And apparently, societally, I guess Catherine can't speak when her mom's there. I guess mom has to lead the conversation. Seems to, anyway. And Henry, boy, he's really, he's really acclaiming himself here and showing his good graces to his future mother-in-law. And I'm not going to talk to her either. We're just all going to sit here.
Well, he does have a good idea to break the silence.
He does. Don't the Allens live here? Let's go talk to the Allens. Because, I mean, come on, Henry. You were in Bath. You know the Allens. So he doesn't want to talk to the Allens.
That's how insufferable, though, the silence is that he chooses to talk to the Allens instead of
You'd rather be with Mrs. Allen than sit in silence. Well, fortunately, Mom is savvy enough that she picks up on this. And she figures out, oh, you just need to talk to Catherine alone. I don't know why Mom couldn't just leave the room.
Right. But her younger sister is not so savvy. And she's like, well, why do you need Catherine to show you the way? You can see the house from the window, sir. And then everyone's probably like, oh, God. Shut up, Sarah.
It's literally next door. Come on. Well, the walk is productive, though. Henry eventually, uses it to confess his love of Catherine, and we get an explanation. Why did the general kick Catherine out of Northanger?
John Thorpe.
He thought she's not rich. And in fact, thought that she was perhaps penniless.
And it was John Thorpe's fault, like I thought, but not in the way I thought. See, what I thought was that the general had met John Thorpe, as we find out is true. Right?
Right. Chanced into him in London.
But I thought John Thorpe...
remembered him from Bath, I suppose.
Right. They spoke at the theater.
They did.
I thought that John Thorpe was like, I'm going to marry that Catherine girl. It's awesome. We're not together right now. She went home. Whatever. I'm going to... And the general was furious because John has lied to them on Catherine's behalf multiple times. That's not exactly what happened.
I mean, that explanation would be bad enough for John Thorpe, but would kind of absolve the general a bit. The reality is a little more showing of the general's character.
Right.
Because turns out, while they were in Bath, because John Thorpe is who he was trying to fluff up his own resume of, hey, the girl I'm going to marry, do you know how rich she is?
Mm-hmm.
And General Tilney got wind of that and thought, well,
no, tell
a
me.
rich girl. I have a son who could marry. I think I should marry, or my son should marry the rich girl into the Tilney family. And so General Tilney was all about Henry stealing away Catherine just for her wealth. Well then, after we find out that the Morlands are offering, £400 for James to marry Isabella, John Thorpe thinks, oh, you know what? They're pretty poor. And hey, I wouldn't want to be associated with those poor people over there, And so that turns General Tilney completely off and says, you know what? If she's penniless, she's sniffing around my money. Get her out of here.
So as much as John Thorpe embellished their wealth, he now cuts them down and really makes up how poor they are in the exact opposite yet equally destructive direction.
Right. Now this, of course, is appalling to Catherine, but Henry and Eleanor, they saw through this. They knew what was, in a way, going on. They were shocked that Dad was so nice to Catherine, because they had a more sensible read, or did they? We'll see, on how rich Catherine was or wasn't. And so knowing what her station was, they liked Catherine because they liked Catherine. Whereas seeing their dad be so solicitous and friendly to her, they're like, why is he being so nice to her? Like, he doesn't like poor people usually. This is weird.
Well, I think probably maybe they thought she was middle of the road and that Dad actually just kind of liked her. Maybe?
Maybe. I don't know. Well, I think this is an interesting contrast here because, so if we look at General Thorpe or General Tilney's conduct against Catherine when he figures out that she's poor or thinks that she's poor, he is just insulting and kicks her out of the house right away. Whereas let's contrast that real quick with how Mr. Moreland dealt with the Thorpes. So Mr. Moreland figured out that Isabella was not so wealthy and was kind of sniffing around his son, rather than denying James the opportunity to marry Isabella or insulting Isabella in some way, he just lowballed her and said, you know what, James, 400 pounds a year. That's what I can scrounge up for you, buddy. Yeah, go for it. And so then allowed Isabella to go, ooh, 400 pounds. I don't know. I'm going to break this one off. Whereas, he avoids the insulting behavior of General Tilney. Because as we're going to find out here very shortly, 400 pounds, Mr. Moreland could afford way more than 400 pounds. And he was using that as a way to see what Isabella's heart was.
So then,
we end this chapter with what I thought was another great quote, with Catherine.
There it is.
Man, we're going to have to do a lot of editing on this one. So anyways, back it up real quick. Boop. So we end this chapter with what I thought was another great line, where Catherine now, in all of her thinking on her treatment by General Tilney, it says, Catherine, at any rate, heard enough to feel that suspecting that General Tilney of either murdering or shutting up his wife, she had scarcely sinned against his character or magnified his cruelty. So the way she was treated and the way that General Tilney was just sniffing after money, you know what, thinking that he murdered his wife, I was kind of on the mark. I wasn't too far off. Yeah. I don't feel bad that I thought that of him now.
And we haven't actually explicitly come out and said that on their walk to the Allens, he proposed.
He confessed his love.
He confessed his love, which meant they should get married, apparently.
But he's got to get permission. We haven't talked to the Morelands yet.
Right. Well, but he tells her, first, will you marry me? Second, he says, okay, now that you said yes, my dad said no. And he does that because I think he thinks that Catherine, who always follows the mores of society and the morals and whatnot, knows that if he says, look, my dad doesn't want us to, but will you marry me? She would have been like, oh, no.
Of course not.
I can't go against this. It wouldn't be right. But she said yes. And now he said, you know what? My dad said no. But in chapter 31, first thing they do
is check with the Morelands. And the Morelands are fine with it. They are perfectly okay with Catherine marrying Henry, except they want to make sure that the general's okay with it. They're not going to give their blessing unless the general's cool with it. Which Catherine and Henry, again, like you were just saying, this brings us into their understanding of society. They don't like it, but they're unfazed by it. They totally understand. Like, oh yeah, of course Dad has to be at least okay with it.
He can't object. He doesn't have to necessarily bring you flowers and balloons and heartily agree, but he has to at least say it's allowed.
Right. So now we kind of have this interim where, Jane Austen kind of hand waves over the entire, I guess, romance and courting period. They write to each other. And in keeping sort of with the morals of the time, because General Tilney hasn't given his assent to this marriage, even writing to each other is kind of out of bounds. And the Morelands, it says, they look the other way.
Scandal again.
Yeah, so they're okay with it, but they want plausible deniability. We don't want to know that you're writing if the general hasn't said okay. So it's fine. It's interesting. You really are basing your entire choice of spousal partner on a couple of dances at Bath, because unless you have the okay to get married at that point, how are you supposed to get to know the person better? You can't even write to them.
Right.
Wild.
And her parents didn't even pass their minds that perhaps something had occurred at Bath where this family and this young gentleman that she is upset about and talking about constantly had her heart. They hadn't considered her heart. This engagement is a surprise to them, despite the fact that they do say yes. And her mom does, her mom slightly insults Catherine once again, saying Catherine would make a sad, heedless young housekeeper, to be sure. Basically, her mom's like, she is going to suck at being a wife, but if you like her, you can have her. Her character is good, for sure. Don't doubt her character. But as a wife, mm-mm.
And really, it's her head that we are concerned about, because it's not like Catherine is scrubbing the floors and making the dinner.
Sure.
She's running the house staff. That's all she's doing. She's giving orders and sitting in her sitting room. So I guess she has to have a level head in order to do that.
What's a heedless housekeeper? Her servants are like, I'm not going to clean today, Mom. And she's like, oh,
okay.
Would you rather not?
Or she tells them to do things inefficiently, I suppose. Or, she sends the one girl out to get stuff at the shop without realizing that she needs to be doing other things in the house. I don't know.
But we do eventually get a yes from General Tilney.
We do. And what tips the general? I mean, it's the same thing that tipped him away from Catherine. It's money. Because fortunately, he had more than one child.
Now, Eleanor has been able to marry rich. She's got a guy with money and a title. She gets to marry a viscount. And where did this fellow come from, you ask?
Turns out, he had stayed at Northanger Abbey. So, really, why, nowadays, we have bars, we had personal letters back in the 80s, now you have Tinder and dating apps. Back then, it was, I hope Dad invites somebody to stay with us. That's about all I got going for me.
And Austen has our questions running through her head because I'm sure all of you were thinking, where did this guy come from? And Austen says, I'm aware that the rules of composition forbid me the introduction of a new character that's not connected, but guess how he's connected?
You've actually seen him before, or at least you've seen his washing bills. Because it was his servant that left him in the cabinet for Catherine to find. It's all, the wheels within wheels. It's all interconnected here.
So he's real. I didn't make him up just now to finish my book. I promise.
He really was at Northanger, just off screen at some point. Well, this all wraps up, and so Catherine gets her allotment from her dad, and turns out she gets £3,000, which I'm assuming in the language of the day, that's per annum. That is annual, correct? That's £3,000 a year she's going to get as her cut of the lands at Fullerton.
Sounds good.
And that works out to $310,000 a year. That's pretty good for a 17-year-old. Well, she's 18 by this point, by the time they marry. But that's pretty good. Your dad's just like, you know what? Here you go. Here's your annual income, $310,000. Have at it.
Sweet.
Which really puts into perspective what he was doing with the £400 he was offering James. He really was trying to lowball the Thorpes to suss out their actual motives. And it's too bad that Isabella was such a gold digger, because had she accepted the £400, she probably could have gotten more later had she been a normal, well-intentioned girl.
Right. Austen leaves us. Everybody who deserves to be is married off happily ever after, because Eleanor and this guy really liked each other. Henry really likes Catherine, although what tipped him into liking her was the fact that she liked him so much. It wasn't like he just liked her and pursued her, but he was like, she seems to like me and only me.
And she's kind of empty-headed. That's nice.
I could teach her to be a Mrs. Allen. She could just take on my thoughts and parrot what I have to say. So happy is Catherine in this situation, and Austen decides to end the book with some sort of moral or question. She leaves it to us to decide whether the tendency of this work be altogether to recommend parental tyranny or reward filial disobedience. What a weird thing. Really? You think this book is recommending parental tyranny because this drama between General Tilney and the kids have brought them closer together?
I don't know. It worked out. Both Eleanor and Henry married rich, so General Tilney's happy. Worked out from his perspective.
I don't know what kind of parental tyranny I could wage. Talking through the speaker on Vincent's baby monitor scares him to death, so that would be,
there you go.
That would be parental tyranny.
That is definitely tyranny.
Even if I was like, hey buddy, I love you, he would scream and hide. He doesn't like robotic voices in any way.
Oh my goodness.
Parental tyranny.
Well, anyway, so we're going to explore this question a little bit and figure out what we think overall of Northanger Abbey next week on our wrap episode. So send us your thoughts. What did you think of Northanger Abbey? Do you think we should have parental tyranny or
filial disobedience?
Filial disobedience. And was there really a lot of disobedience? Because Catherine ran off. So yeah, so look for the wrap-up episode next week. Send us your thoughts. We are on the socials at CYSTpod. That's Twitter, Instagram, and the Facebook.
Let us know which one of our kids you want.
Network. Yeah, no, don't tell us. It's going to be a blind bag. It's a blind bag.
Grab bag.
You just get what you get. Or you can send us an email, cystpod@gmail.com. Rate and review us on Apple Podcasts. Leave us a 5-star. Tell us how you think. Doing good, doing bad. Feedback's always good. Let's get this pod better. It helps people find this pod. and tell your friends. Now you've read Northanger Abbey. Don't you want to talk about it? Don't you want to find out about your friend's opinion of fine muslin and beautiful gloves? I know I do. Did you like the upper room or the lower room better?
Do you think the pump room is really a room full of water where you wear trays around your neck and let them float around while you eat and talk?
I don't know that you could really sign a guest book in a water-filled room. I think waterproof paper was beyond their time.
All right. I think we're done.
I think we are. So this has been Classes You Slept Through. Please be kind to your janitors, folks. They work hard in your schools.